Hello everyone and welcome back to the XRP Insider channel as with you. Always, this is Rich doing another video today on XRP, so I hope you're all having a wonderful day today. Wherever you are in this great world, we're going to talk about XRP. And at the time I'm recording this video, XRP is sitting at $2.38 an hour or so from now. They're going to vote on that stable coin bill. I hope to cover what happens with the stablecoin bill in my next video. But if you look at XRP and you look at Bitcoin, which is sitting at almost 106,000, the chart looks identical. So if Bitcoin starts moving upward, it's going to take the rest of the market with it. And I think maybe the market is paused right now waiting to see what happens with the stablecoin bill, where we go from here. Alelinar Tourette says, Senate Banking Committee Democrats just dropped a scathing staff analysis of the latest Genius Act draft ahead of this evening's vote. Staffers described the latest Genius Act draft as a blueprint for Trump crypto corruption and big tech dominance over digital currencies, urging additional changes to address unresolved issues. The concerns that they are citing is there's no ban on Trump profiting from his own stablecoin. Listen, if he creates a stablecoin, so be it. Who really cares? It's just like the meme coin, Trump coin. They hated that as well. Listen, if Trump makes money and investors make money, who really cares? Let's Elon Musk, X, create X money. I think that would be a great innovation in the United States. Expands loopholes for Tether, aiding terrorists and criminals. I am not a fan of that. There should be no loopholes for Tether. And I'll talk about who got that put in there in a minute. No real consumer protections or financial safeguards. You know, they always have to have that in place. If that's not in place, we won't see institutional adoption. Everything has to be perfect for institutions to want to get involved with stablecoins. So let's see what happens next, but this is who got those loopholes put in there. Tether starts 2025 with $5 billion in profits, and a key ally in Trump's Commerce Commit nominee Howard Lutnick. You know, this guy is a big advocate for Tether. He's also a Bitcoin maxi as well. And these people have no place in the US government. In my opinion, Tether cannot pass an audit. This guy claims that Tether is fully audited and that everything that they claim is actually there. And I don't believe him for 1 second. Circle in talks to sell as Coinbase, and Ripple emerge as top buyers. So it looks like Circle is still trying to sell itself to Coinbase or Ripple. I think Ripple will end up buying Circle. I think they are going to do what they can to get this deal done, and it even created a bidding war Ripple leading over Coinbase with an estimated offer of $9 to $11 billion for Circle. What happened to that $20 billion offer that everybody was spreading all over X? Like I said, I think Ripple is going to do what it takes to acquire Circle. Coinbase only wants to acquire Circle, in my opinion, to keep that $1 billion flowing into Coinbase. And Circle, they have their position sucks because they're paying Coinbase $1 billion out of their profit. If Ripple acquires Circle, all of a sudden they can renegotiate that deal and get that down most likely to maybe 10 or 20 million, because we all know what a great negotiator Brad Garlinghouse is. And Brad said this, the launch of regulated XRP futures on CME Group marks a key institutional milestone for XRP. I'm very excited to report that Hidden Road cleared the first block trade on CME. At the opening, you know, I said there's going to be some volatility with this early on. But then I'm expecting upward movement in the price of XRP. You got to remember, today is the first day that this went live. Smoke says CME Group and XRP. It was always the plan who's next. Everyone else, and this is kind of blurry. So I'm going to show you a better version of this. You see CME Group right here tied to Vanguard, Accenture, American Express, SBI, MUFG, Bank of America, HSBC. A lot of this has already happened, even PNC Bank. This is why Vanguard could care less about a Bitcoin ETF. Take a listen spot. Bitcoin ETF's question came in. Hey, we know you're not offering one. Have you changed your mind? What would it take for you to change your mind? We don't plan to, and we're not going to change our minds around this. Unless the asset class changes for why First of all, we don't believe it belongs like a Bitcoin ETF belongs in a long-term portfolio, someone saving for their retirement. It's a speculative asset. That's exactly it. And the funds that we offer invest in asset classes that actually have underlying cash flow. So like we mentioned, stocks, you're buying the forward earnings of a company, and that bond, right, as coupon and principal payments, yeah, you're going to pay me back, and you're paying me something for lending you the money, exactly, right? So they both can be valued, and that's for us. We understand why they would rise up in a portfolio and the role they would play, and we can model them. Something like Bitcoin is just too volatile and is not it's not a store of value. It hasn't been, and it's very volatile there. When stocks got hammered in recent crises, that Bitcoin went right with them. And so it is speculative, really tough to think about how it belongs in a long-term portfolio. So he calls it speculative and says Bitcoin is not a store of value. Now imagine if Vanguard goes on to file for an XRP ETF, but this was all part of the plan from years ago, and the plan is coming together now in real time, and that's what I've been trying to tell you. You know, back in 2022, the worst time in crypto, I watched Ripple advance more and more every single month. And they were advancing at a very alarming rate, but they were building out an entire infrastructure for XRP to run on. And even back then, I said, you're either holding this asset or you better be buying, because things are going to change as we push ahead. And I thought it was going to happen a lot sooner, but we needed an administration change in the White House. Once Donald Trump won the presidency, everything changed like an overnight event. And I'm still expecting an overnight event for XRP. The price of XRP, Bill Haggerty, on the Genius Act, and makes a clear distinction between stablecoins and Bitcoin, which he says has a speculative component. Take a listen. What is it? It basically establishes a legal and regulatory framework to issue stablecoins. Here in America, a stablecoin is stable, meaning it's backed by a certain currency. In this case, it's tied to the US dollar, but also it's backed either by cash or by short-term US Treasury securities. So it's entirely safe having that type of regulatory framework and disclosure around it. So we know exactly what's backing up, right? These digital dollars, if you will, is going to be great, because what was happening before was the SEC would issue something that basically just scared people, wouldn't tell them what works. They would go after enforcement actions after things that and that left the entire industry saying, what are we allowed to do? What are we not? This is a payment mechanism, and not to be confused with Bitcoin or something that has a speculative component. This puts us into a digital payment framework, the fastest rails available, much better than the system developed in the 70s and 80s. Take notice, he's talking about Swift, how everything's going to change with stable coins, but he is right. You know, he went on to say later about central bank digital currency. He's in favor of a stable coin instead of a CBDC. And that's very important as well. But a CBDC is nothing more than a stable coin issued by the Fed or the government. And we are now going to have a digital dollar in the very near future. That's what this stablecoin bill was all about. To begin with, it was about pushing ahead with the digital dollar. XGD is now live on the XRP ledger. Another stablecoin comes to the XRP ledger. StrayTax, Southeast Asia's leading digital payment infrastructure provider, today announced the launch of its Singapore dollar-backed stablecoin, XSGD, on the XRP ledger. And then they go on to talk about what the XRP ledger is. But I've been saying this for a while. We are going to see more central bank digital currencies on the XRP ledger. We're going to see more stable coins on the XRP ledger, because XRP was built to move this value, whether it's a central bank digital currency or a stable coin. XRP moves it. You know, everybody was always like, well, with these stable coins, that's going to take away from XRP. And it's really not. It's going to add utility tax to XRP. But like I said, we need to get these Bitcoin and people out of the US government. Hey, if they want to push Bitcoin, great, but also push other cryptocurrencies that can actually fix a lot of the problems the US has with the US dollar, if you could strengthen the US dollar using something like XRP, why not do it? Right now we have a ton of debt as well. We have a liquidity crisis looming for our banking system, and that's like a global liquidity crisis. And if you have something like XRP that can fix it before it even happens, why not push forward? That's what I don't get. They always talk about people being tribal in crypto, and the most tribal people out there are the Bitcoin maxis. But like I said, it seems like XRP right now, it's kind of just sitting here waiting to see what happens with that stablecoin bill. I'm also expecting some upward movement to begin. Why? Because of the CME announcement as well. And that going live, I think that's going to bring more and more value over time. Right now, it's day one, like I said, and I even said you could possibly see some downward movement before we start to see the gains begin. Will it happen this week? There's a good chance of that happening. I'll talk more about that in another video. But until it does all happen, stay patient, stay positive, and let's get rich together. With that said, I'm going to wrap up this video. I want to thank you all for watching. I appreciate all of you. I'll see you in the next one. Have a great night.